Live. Okay, everyone, we got the first question. How can we get, so first of all, let's introduce our stars right here. We have Crystal Rose Pierce of Sensay and Micheal Angelo of EduBlock, and we're here to answer all of your questions related to the Restart Week and the Startup Society Summit in San Francisco and Ethereal ConsenSys. We're really happy to talk to you guys, and we already have the first question. And the question is, how can we get involved with your movement in Puerto Rico? I live in PR, looking to get busy, a blockchain enthusiast, and an ICO investor.
Amazing. So I think you could register for Restart Week. So we have Restart Week. It's going to be the 11th to the 19th. It's starting off with a hackathon. So there's going to be a lot of students from here, a lot of enthusiasts that are just ready to meet people. So if you want, it's in Mayagüez. It's in the colegio. You would know. So yeah, ready to see you there.
Perfect, perfect. All right, next question. How do you prevent something like a special economic zone that only comes into existence due to special interest in centralized planning from becoming too centralized from the get-go? Well, actually, I fundamentally disagree with that question, because the special economic zones did not occur through centralization. They did occur through special interest, but they were special interest in response to a lot of tyranny. So after the fall of Mao Zedong, after his death, they started instituting special economic zones as a response to this mass starvation that occurred from the Great Leap Forward. And what happened was that there was a series of Chinese businessmen who, in a decentralized fashion, who were not part of the Chinese Communist Party, they started pushing for special economic zones. So it never came from a centralized interest. And in fact, the Chinese Communist Party was very much against the concept of special economic zones. It was very against their ideology of forced egalitarianism from the top down. So I disagree that special economic zones have to be centralized. And in fact, the best special economic zones are ones that happen organically in a grassroots level. And that's precisely what we're trying to do in Puerto Rico by involving so many Puerto Rican organizations in our consortium.
That was really well said.
Does anyone else want to take a shot at that?
I think you nailed it.
Okay, excellent. All right, let's take the next question. So, how do you so are mutual aid societies a solution? Have you looked into the concept of DISCs, distributed income supported cooperatives, as a tech-enabled vision of mutual aid societies as a solution? So I briefly talked about this in the past. So a mutual aid society is sort of the synthesis of capitalism and communism espoused by the philosopher Pierre Proudhon. He believed that in the future, technology will increase at such a rate that our classical definitions of capitalism and communism will sort of fall apart. And because of the state of things will be so rapidly changing, there'll need to be mutual aid societies, which are voluntary small organizations that people opt into that can help support one another. And a lot of people, including the people that are supportive of the DISC cooperatives, they believe that blockchain technology can facilitate the emergence of these things, because rather than having to rely through a trusted party, they can rely on more trustless. I mean, that's not to say that you won't have to trust people. There will always be that, but there'll be that added layer of transparency that'll allow for less transaction costs in human reactions, in human actions.
Yeah, I think we can speak to that one also with cryptocurrency. So there is a possibility that the solution to some of these problems is a system that has yet to be fully discovered or implemented, and may look and feel a lot like the systems that have functioned before, but by functioning better. So if you look into the concept of universal basic income in relationship to how cryptocurrency could potentially come into play, this is an area where, more specifically to blockchain technology, there's a potential for a lot of innovation in this particular case. I think Puerto Rico is really prime for having innovation and having a new program like this, because it's just such a perfect ecosystem, and it's a very specific ecosystem with its own regulatory body. So, you know, I would hesitate to say what the solution is, but want to point to the fact that there are some really amazing potentials out there with the technologies that could be facilitated by blockchain and by the cryptocurrency.
Excellent answer. And in Micheal Angelo, do you sort of see EduBlock as sort of a mutual aid society for students?
Are you on mute?
I think, yeah, I think you might have some sound difficulties, Micheal Angelo.
I think that's a great one to point to, EduBlock and mutual aid.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because of it's an example of rather than from the top down, people are saying, okay, we need a new educative policy on how to enact different education reforms. It's Puerto Rican students who are educating themselves. So I completely agree.
Can you hear me? Am I back?
Oh, perfect, excellent.
Awesome. So what I was saying basically is going back to the topic of special economic zones. So they have their own like unique, flexible economy, and that's something that's happening if you can compare to in Puerto Rico with like Act 20 and 22. So we're basically a commonwealth, right? We are sort of a state, but we're not a state. So it's basically the perfect example of what that would be. So throughout history, we have depended too much on the government, and through means like this, through means like EduBlock, you have this decentralized incubator where the students learn by themselves, and they interact with the world without the need of like, let's say the government. So they can do everything by themselves. And we have the tools necessary to, you know, startups by ourselves. And I feel like that is something that blockchain, transparency, and even cryptocurrency can help aid our journey to becoming something like that.
Excellent. All right. Take the next question. All right, so one question is, in the Philippines, they just issued an SEZ blockchain-friendly policy model. What can the first step for Puerto Rico to head in that direction? So, Crystal, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I just missed the last part of it. What did you say? What came?
What are the first steps for Puerto Rico to do the same?
Compared to what?
So well, to add blockchain into the special economic zones policy?
Yes, and to enact SEZs with blockchain-friendly policies in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I'm thinking of other places, other territories that have the SEZ having policy movement with blockchain, and there are a few. I'm thinking Cayman Islands, other sovereign places that don't necessarily have an SEZ because the whole nation is sovereign, but have blockchain policy. I think each one has their own independent way that they're going about it, but I think a first step would be, you know, the special economic zone essentially exists so that companies can work within friendlier policy in general. And I think that blockchain in and of itself is already friendly. If you're using just the ledger for exactly that, for what it is, and you're using the technology, you can implement the technology for transparency. You can implement it, you know, simply for the bare bones functionality of it, of keeping a ledger, keeping a database. So I guess I would want to know more specifically, like which part of policy wants to be more friendly. Is it the ability for a company to raise funds in cryptocurrency in an ICO model? Is it for a company to be able to use and leverage funds? Because typically the only the only hesitation in countries today with policy related to blockchain is not the usage of blockchain technology, it's the usage of cryptocurrency.
Agreed. So one first step that could be taken to make a special economic zone in Puerto Rico is that there needs to be a consortium of blockchain entrepreneurs that make it clear that the first jurisdiction that can create clear, concise, and streamlined regulations for blockchain entrepreneurs will have an enormous flow of capital. Blockchain entrepreneurs, it's not even necessarily a problem that there's too much regulation. The problem is the uncertainty of regulation. They don't know if what they're doing will be illegal tomorrow or the next month or the next year. But if there's a place that sets in stone, like, here are your regulations, this is how you will be governed. You know, it won't be too difficult. You won't have to fill out that much paperwork. There will be an enormous amount of capital, and they'll have the opportunity to become the next Hong Kong. And that's precisely what Puerto Rico should be doing. It's to try to be the Hong Kong of the Caribbean. Another first step is not just try to benefit from from capital that comes from blockchain technology, but to use the technology itself for governing and to make more effective special economic zones. Essentially, the biggest problem with special economic zones right now is they tend to be not transparent. And as a previous question alluded to, they are sometimes controlled by special interests. By having all their finances and property and governing of a special economic zone laid out with blockchain governance, they're able to transparently audit and observe what the special economic zone is doing. I mean, Estonia is kind of an example of this. They instituted the first e-governance system. And because of that, despite it being a post-Soviet country, they were able to significantly reduce corruption and increase ease of doing business within the country. And that led to huge economic booms. And in fact, that's why it is one of the most stellar economy in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I think something that is very important. Blockchain is very speculated right now, and more in Puerto Rico with our economic crisis, what we've been through in the last 100 years. So I think, like Crystal said, blockchain is a friendly technology. So it's mainly focused on fintech, financial technologies. So how do we get that to the community? That's the thing. So we have to do more community outreach, like not get to the government, but get to the people. Not with the what or the how, but with the why. Interconnect and let them be less afraid of the technology. So I think organizations like GBA, P18, Link Puerto Rico, and even EduBlock, which is using this technology, this decentralized technology, but it's infusing it not only with the community, but with the students. And so more traditional people from the island get to see that that connection through the community and through the students, and they're more accepting of it. So I think before we think in implementing, we need to do that outreach to the community, and I think that is very important for the coming years.
Right.
Excellent. And so we have a next question. For many of us who have yet to fully grok blockchain, how exactly is blockchain supposed to help rebuild Puerto Rico? Conventionally, we need a plan to implement infrastructure. We need a capital to build those resources. We need people to operate those systems. How does adding blockchain to the mix help? Rather than seemingly just add another layer of complexity. It would be nice to understand a few direct applications and illustrations and when we would try to convey our new understanding to others.
I see. Well, it really depends on where blockchain is implemented. Just because blockchain is something that is new and something that everyone says ICO and everyone's like, oh my God, I don't think it has to be implemented everywhere. I think it has its uses. I would be more focused on fintech, financial technologies. Well, blockchain makes everything more easy. It makes everything more efficient. Everything is more transparent. And let's say something like even voting. Some people have problems with voting. Some people say, for example, I'm not saying this, but some people say that the government, they cheat when it comes to voting. So maybe put voting on the blockchain, make everything transparent and everything reliable on the government. And you can't move anything, you can't interact with it. everything that is put in there is immutable. So stuff like that, I think it would make everything more efficient. Something like, let's say, renewable energy. You can use microgrids and even tokenize energy. That is something that would be highly beneficial for the island now that we have 50-year-old electric infrastructure that is horrible. We get a lot of power outages, but I think with this we can actually do great things, and everything could be more efficient in that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to think about blockchain technology, it removes complexity and it actually makes systems more efficient, like Micheal Angelo said. So one of the things is, if we started with the government could do an open data policy, which would connect the 120 plus government agencies seamlessly, frictionlessly, and make it so that they have a connection that's beyond their centralized databases. It would open up transparency, so it would be easier for everyone to understand where the funds are going that go in and out of the government. And so that's one simple way. I think the second, in terms of government, would be identity. And so, Estonia was just mentioned, and there are other countries that are doing a phenomenal job at this. If you could get identity on the blockchain, this would be the first step into revitalizing the system of how funds are distributed, for all of the citizens. And there are some fundamental changes that could shift just inside the government. And I see that it sounds like these are really big changes. They are, but they greatly increase efficiency of the overall country or the territory, where they're implemented. The second thing, though, I think on the side of how is it going to benefit us over cause more complexity, one of the greatest things would be to start to implement these technologies in areas like energy and like education and like healthcare, because all of a sudden Puerto Rico will become the main example of the best uses of blockchain technology on the planet. So I think that all of the potential is there, and it would also facilitate some of the highest paying jobs on the planet. So if there are engineers, and I know that Mayagüez has a fantastic computer science program, and it has the most students who are graduated out of that program on the island, the most computer science graduates, those engineers could be building this technology, and that would be a really huge lift for the overall economy. As well as anyone else who does product work. It could be user experience or marketing or design. There's so much potential. And this is technology that would be able to be replicated and used in other places. So the more that Puerto Rico builds and the better that it gets, the more that this can spread and provide these jobs.
Excellent. And I think there's one more application of blockchain technology that has tremendous value in the future. And it's registration of property. So there's an economist called Hernando de Soto who wrote the book, The Mystery of Capital. He's trying to find out why the poor have such a hard time with participating in the market economy. And what he realizes is that the poor have an enormous amount of assets. In fact, he argues that there's $12 trillion in assets that are untouched, that are not activated. He calls them zombie or dead assets. But the problem is they can't access them because they are not registered in a formalized way. Consequently, they can't benefit from all the land that they actually currently have. What blockchain technology allows you to do is have a transparent ledger that shows where that property is. There's plenty of countries in the developing world that it's incredibly difficult to maintain records of blockchain technology. Now, Puerto Rico is certainly better than a lot of places. But if you look at the World Bank, they have something called the World Bank Ease of Doing Business rankings. And they rank Puerto Rico as some of the worst places in the world to register property. What blockchain technology could do is that they could register their property on the blockchain, and rather than having it in a centralized institution within government in San Juan, everyone could verify through this blockchain that this property is verified in this specific location through GPS coordinate or in a 3D map. So that is one great way that people that are currently unable to activate themselves in the economy can become active participants. Very good. So we have another question about philosophy, actually. So what are some philosophers that have influenced the work you are doing?
Satoshi.
Satoshi.
I think that what I really love about this space, specifically that a lot of mathematicians have really given us the keys to unlock technology that makes everything that we're doing now able to be more secure, truly peer-to-peer, remove intermediaries. It's all been built with a core value system that is better for humanity. And so to me, the greatest minds who have built out blockchain technology and cryptocurrency are philosophers, and they are humanists. They truly have these deep core values. And so if you look at the blockchain and you look at the core values of blockchain, like transparency, accountability, global access, those are all values that I think we intrinsically as people, if we live with those values, become better as a whole. So to me, I've been extremely inspired by some of the builders of this space, known and unknown, and named and unnamed. And I think Satoshi is one of the best examples of someone who selflessly gave one person, him, her, or they, gave this gift to the world. And that's something that I look and aspire to operate with those same values.
Excellent. If I were to say mine, I know it's used a lot, but it's Steve Jobs. When it comes to being an entrepreneur and following your dream no matter what, I think that inspired me greatly. He is one of my idols. Why? Because I feel like he chased his dream no matter how small it was, no matter how many people told him that it wasn't going to be true, it wasn't going to succeed. He did it anyways, even living in his mom's house, even being unemployed, even having to work on Apple in his garage. And some quotes he has, like, once you realize that the world you live in was made up by people no smarter than you, that's when you know you can change things. And that's kind of what blockchain is. It's giving people the tools necessary to actually change the world the way they want to. And so I feel like, yeah, he's my idol, and it's very important to always follow your dreams.
Solid answer. So for me, I actually studied philosophy and political science in school, but I'm not going to get into all this abstract stuff like Kant or Rousseau. I'll talk about some really practical philosophers that have wide implications for blockchain tech and doing good. The first is an obscure economist named Henry George. Henry George believed that the only justified and economical form of tax was something called a land valuation tax, in which the government or the state or the voluntary organization, whatever you want to call it, taxes the value of the land itself rather than the improvements upon the land. And interestingly enough, it's continued despite being a couple hundred years old. In fact, Milton Friedman, when commenting on the future of digital currencies, because he did predict that cryptocurrencies would exist, that there'd be a non-government digital currency that would exist, he hypothesized that in that state, the only way that governments can continue to tax was tax something that's immobile and something that cannot be added to. And in that case, that would be land. So he hypothesized, because of the coming of cryptocurrencies, the only viable form of taxation would be land. And it's actually interesting, special economic zones, even if they're privately developed, what they tend to gain revenue from is actually they sell out land to developers who then lease it out to further developers and then people who rent out houses. In a sense, taxation is rent in that scenario. One more philosopher that's relevant to this movement is one who hypothesized about voice and exit and loyalty. His name was Albert Hirschman. So he believes that there are three forms of political change. There is loyalty, voice, and exit. Loyalty is submitting to the existing authority and supporting it. Voicing is either talking and arguing with people or voting within a system. And then there's exit. And exit is when you leave the system and create something new. And even if it doesn't succeed, it creates competition and need for the existing system to change. And what cryptocurrency is allowed to do, it doesn't have to, it should not be antagonistic to governments. In fact, there's a lot of ways that governments can benefit from it, as Crystal mentioned, like Dubai and Estonia are using blockchain technology. But they provide a way to create alternative systems, and same with special economic zones, that can put pressure on existing governments to change with times and realize that it's the 21st century and there needs to be 21st century solutions.
Excellent.
Okay, so we have our next question. Why Puerto Rico? Why not Wyoming, giving their direction of embracing more crypto-friendly legislation?
The Wyoming has done an excellent job with policy, and I think that Colorado is next, given that the lobbyists who helped with Wyoming are moving to Colorado. Puerto Rico is, I'm sure, very soon on that list. Puerto Rico has already made a friendly policy for high net worth individuals and for a purpose. And I think that it's really important that if we're looking at business owners and we're looking at people who are being encouraged to move to Puerto Rico, we want to encourage businesses to operate as well. So for me, I think that we're in a regulatory landscape where, and it's specifically related to the token-based businesses or businesses who are running a fundraising event like an ICO. Those businesses are looking towards the world of how regulation is going to impose on them and how it's going to stifle their ability to build. Most of the companies building blockchain technology, it's not that their technology is so radically against current legislation in their area that it's going to cause some kind of problem, but it's actually the mechanism by which they are raising money for their for their company. So if Puerto Rico were to choose to go on the same path of policy as Wyoming, what it means is that a tremendous amount of the businesses that are being established in Delaware or in other places that currently have a very loose, policy around this, meaning that they're going to have some kind of regulatory issue risk that could come up. Maybe they'd create policy that's not friendly. If those people were to move to Puerto Rico, that would be a huge influx of very valuable companies and a lot of funds. And that would mean that even the venture capitalists would be looking towards Puerto Rico of where they're going to be putting the money. So I don't think it's like if this one or that one. It's not an if or. For me, it's more of a, how can we all do it together and which places will do it fastest? Undoubtedly, just like cannabis, this is something that will eventually touch every state. It's how fast can they move? And if Puerto Rico can get ahead of that curve, then all of the people who are starting businesses, every entrepreneur who is raising capital will be moving to Puerto Rico.
Totally.
100%.
All right. So why not Wyoming? I mean, obviously there's the Act 20 and Act 22 benefits. So that's something that Wyoming doesn't have, though I believe they have either a very low income tax or no income tax at all, but they still don't have to avoid the federal income tax. One other benefit is that they are located by a port. However, there's a problem with that, and that's the Jones Act, which places enormous restrictions on what can be shipped to and from Puerto Rico. So it makes it difficult to benefit from what Puerto Rico is, which is a port. In fact, Puerto Rico, if you know Spanish, you obviously know this, means rich port. But unfortunately, there's little way to do that with current regulations. What we can do is create a special economic zone that actually has a replacement of the Jones Act, or at least a minimizing of the Jones Act that can allow it to benefit from its geographical location. So we actually have our next question. What is being done about the talent on the island? Is the rebuilding going to be outsourced?
Right now, as of now, that's why we're organizing Restart Week. So this Restart Week is a more interactive. It's a more interactive event from the 11th to the 19th. Starting with a hackathon, we're getting the brightest minds from all the different universities, from the UPR to the Inter-American University to the Polytechnic and University of Puerto Rico. So right now, everyone's interconnecting and everyone's joining together to help with all sorts of projects, not only blockchain, but also renewable energy, housing, and all sorts of other sorts of projects. But we are focused on community work. We want to fix Puerto Rico, and that's our main goal. So as of now, yes, all the talent on the island, at least in EduBlock, is working towards a better Puerto Rico. But yes, there's some people from the States that come and help, and they're welcome. And I'm very grateful for everyone being here and actually wanting to help Puerto Rico. So we all share the same cause.
Excellent. All right. So yeah, I mean, that's one thing that a lot of people often complain about when they talk about these movements. They talk about, oh yeah, we're bringing in talent right now, but what about existing Puerto Rican entrepreneurs? I mean, as you know, Micheal Angelo is a perfect example of. There's plenty of incredibly smart, dedicated people on the island. It has some of the highest human capital in the world. It's just not being tapped into. And the beautiful thing is we have the honor of being able to have many Puerto Rican entrepreneurial organizations within our consortium, including the Foundation for Puerto Rico, Friends of Puerto Rico, PR Science, Colmena 66, and University of Maya's. There's so much talent and educated Puerto Ricans right now. They're just not being tapped into. And we think with the power of blockchain technology, the capital that brings, and the policy environment that special economic zones can lead to a more entrepreneurial ecosystem, they can really benefit.
I agree with that. I think there's a tremendous amount of talent here on the island. We have the same intellectual capacity than anyone in the world. We just never had the tools to, or most people just leave the mainland because there's no opportunities. But as of now, with all the investors coming, with Act 20 and 22, the tax exceptions, I think the talent stays here, and we're all like just channeling this through blockchain projects and just startups, focusing on fintech. So yeah, I think Puerto Rico, as of now, is not focusing that much on exporting goods, but if not software, so fintech. I honestly think Puerto Rico can become the center of this multi-million-dollar empire through fintech development, which is something that is in need. As of now, there's not so many blockchain software developers that can work on like more in-depth works and coding on blockchain, maybe like Ethereum, Solidity. That's something that is in need. So if we can channel this movement, we can channel the tools that we have and the investors, we can teach those bright students blockchain, and they can just fill the need.
Yeah, I think that Puerto Rico has a very similar issue as Los Angeles, and that Los Angeles is one of the top, in terms of volume, they have the top number of graduates engineering-wise in the country. So more engineering students are graduated in LA than nearly anywhere else, and certainly more than Silicon Valley or San Francisco. The challenge is they all move north. And so what has been historical is that a draw happens from all of the Silicon Valley companies where everyone, the Midwest, anyone who's graduating amazing students out of any of the universities, MIT or otherwise, they are all heading that direction. So I think only recently have we seen that other areas are really having a stronger influx of their tech minds staying in their region. So New York is a great example. New York is now number 2 on the list of tech in terms of what the volume of companies and output is. And I think that that's a really amazing feeder to Puerto Rico. So not only can Puerto Rico have some incredible new syllabus start to come about and have some new teaching for the people who are there, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in New York. Maybe they've gone to school and then they come back. And so I think that there's a lot of possibility. To me, Puerto Rico represents kind of the what Los Angeles is to Silicon Valley, Puerto Rico is to New York. You're going to have a lot of people just leave and they go straight up north, and you're going to have a lot of people ending up staying if you can have some better education. And I think also having this global connection of being able to work from Puerto Rico, but work for a company that is based anywhere else.
Excellent response. So we have a new question regarding, which is actually really timely, regarding Puerto Rico's recent protest. What is being done about the public's perception of foreign investors benefiting from tax exemptions?
Oh, tough question. Can you ask it again? It's a really touchy subject.
Right. So regarding Puerto Rico's recent protest, what is being done about the public's perception on foreign investors benefiting from tax exemptions?
Okay. I honestly think that at least the protests, they have the protests are meaningful. I think we could channel our energy on more beneficial things. As of the investors coming to the island, I find no problem with that. As for the media and how the people are perceiving these, there's a barrier. That's what I think is happening right now. So you have the millennials, you have the entrepreneurs, people like me, people like AJ from EduBlock, all the members from EduBlock, people like Link Puerto Rico, GBA. Those are people that are more open-minded. They're usually millennials, entrepreneurs. I feel like those types of people, like, for example, us, we get a good message out there that some investors are here, yes, for Act 20 and 22, but they're also here to help the island. We want to restructure the debt, and we want to restructure any type of problem that the island may have. But in that barrier, you also have the more traditional people, the people that have lived through some moments in Puerto Rican history that they know how it feels to be cheated. So when they see investors coming to the island, they just think it's happening all over again, that they're coming here, they're going to reap the rewards and then just leave. That's why organizations like EduBlock is so important, to get the word out there that we're actually focusing on helping Puerto Rico, getting startups going, and just doing community work. That's why I incentivize everyone on the island to participate in the hackathon. We have a hackathon the 11th, and just every single event during Restart Week. They're going to be focused on community outreach. We're going to be working on fintech, so blockchain technology, VR, open data, and we're also focusing on renewable energy. That what I said earlier is something that I feel is way important for our infrastructure as of now. I feel like as an island, we have a lot of sun, we have a lot of wind, and renewable energy could be that solution that we're seeking.
Really amazing answer. That's totally on point. I'm going to be clear. I can't speak to it as much or nearly as much as someone who is Puerto Rican and lives in Puerto Rico. I can say two things. One, any movement that's trying to rebuild Puerto Rico, not only should it be, it has to be for the benefit of Puerto Ricans, it must be led by Puerto Ricans. And that's what the Startup Societies and the Restart Week consortium is, and what Digital Rain consortium is. It's bringing together all these partners to work together, and half of our consortium is Puerto Rican partners. They need to be the voices that are leading the charge. It can't be people from the outside. Other groups have to be supporting roles, crucial roles, yet supporting. The second important element is that if it's purely tax benefits, that's where you fail. When you think that merely having tax benefits will lead to a good economy, that's simply not true. If you look at the economic literature, especially with special economic zones, you find that having a lower tax rate or a higher tax rate doesn't matter that much. The real cost and the real creator or destroyer of wealth is how good the regulations are. Are they too stringent? Are they too vague? Or are they concise? Are they streamlined? And are they well known? So if it's just taxes, people just park their money there, sit on the beach, and drink mojitos. But if you have a regulatory environment that makes it advantageous for people to set up businesses there and live their lives rather than being parasitic, that's when they stop being people from the outside in and people who are contributing and being part of it and hiring Puerto Ricans and creating economic value that leads to bringing people back from the diaspora back to Puerto Rico.
I agree.
All right, so let's look at the next question. Most technologies, Crystal, do you want to take that one at all?
I think you both spoke to it extremely well.
Okay, most tech. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Crystal. What'd you say?
Oh, sorry. I think I have lag on my side. I'm getting my video is lagging.
Same here.
Okay, there we go. I think
Crystal, I think we lost you for a moment there.
I have you guys. Are we back?
Yeah, we're good. We're good now. All right, excellent. So most technologies are years away from the common people. How can such complex technology be inclusive and become part of the society in a way that these solutions actually work for people?
That's a really fair point. And I think about it kind of like the beginning of the internet. Unless everyone had email, it was really hard to make email very functional for anyone. There's a great video about this that is, if you look up the Good Day in America 1995, I think, video, What is the Internet Anyway? It's a really good testament to where we are with blockchain. It's very new technology. I would point to a currency called M-Pesa out of Kenya. So Kenya, 50% or more than 50% of their total GDP is spent in cryptocurrency peer-to-peer because people found that the most valuable thing that they had that they could transact were cell phone minutes. Cell phone minutes were so valuable that they wanted to exchange them for goods and services with each other. And so they took it into their own hands and they decided that they would start to transact until this was born. And it's actually part of the telecommunications system, but now a financial instrument. And so I bring this one up because it really takes a community of people who want to create some sort of value. And it doesn't necessarily have to be cryptocurrency being exchanged between people, but it's where is the value and what is the practical use for people. And it doesn't have to be something that is so advanced. Everything can be changed and improved with the use of blockchain technology. It's a matter of what are the pain points that are currently having pressure in Puerto Rico that need that kind of help.
So, I mean, there's not much I can contribute to that, except for, like Crystal said with her analogy about the internet, you have to be able to use it without knowing that you're using it. You don't have to know a back-end programming language in order to use a website. You shouldn't have to know about blockchain technology in order to use the blockchain. Unfortunately, there's been a little bit of slowing. There hasn't been a ton of progress in terms of UI and UX. Well, there's been a lot more, but out the gate, it was a little bit less accessible. But I think now people are really starting to focus on usability as something that's important for blockchain tech. All right, another question. I think what you guys are doing is absolutely great and necessary step, not only for Puerto Rico, but for the rest of the world. I was just wondering how much freedom from regulation can you achieve in a special economic zone in Puerto Rico, given that it is part of the USA? How can blockchain be used to cut down on corruption?
On corruption.
Well, corruption is really easy to combat when you have transparency. And I think that that's the open data policy that I had mentioned before. It's a really big initiative, but if you look at the places that have done it, Los Angeles has an open data policy actually internally with the government, which means that you can look at any data related to spend in the government. The city controller has opened up all of those data streams. You can consume the data in your own application. So you, the citizen, can create a website that exposes everything, the salaries that are happening and where the money is going. And I think that that's one really simple way, is just provide transparency into these systems. I'm sure there are many other connected systems within the government agencies that have data, and that data is transferred between them. The corruption is removed when you just open it up with transparency.
I agree with that.
Cool. So next question, what are some actual applications of blockchain being used for social good today?
Well, I think that social good is pretty broad, but if you want to look at it in terms of which projects are doing something that will help either humanity or resources or the world, I think resourcing is the top one that I can think of as an example. Anything that provides a credit. So energy credits seem to be the one that's the easiest right now in terms of how cryptocurrency functions. And so there are a lot of projects that have launched recently. Because it's such a new space, I have seen very few that have been fully implemented in order to change such a massive incumbent system. And I think it will take a little bit of time. But my favorite projects are power, water. There's actually water chains that are being developed. And I think that some of the biggest projects I've seen coming out are, specifically around the financial institution, but you could consider it social good if you have a society of people who have a lack of banking access and a lack of ability to use their cash freely and without fees and without being locked up by intermediaries. So I consider the whole movement social good in a sense. I know that wasn't likely the intention of the question, but it's the core of it, and it's the most practical use today. We're still at the very base layer of what the usage is. One thing I really like is the charities. I've seen a couple that have come up, and I'm not pointing to any specific projects because they're all still under development. There are a few that I've seen actually working in the ecosystem as of yet, but for the ones that are the charity-driven applications, those are letting you see the entire transparent chain of where your funds are going. So there was a lot of corruption that has been seen in some of the largest charitable organizations in the world. And you can look up what happened with Haiti when Haiti was in a crisis and ended up not receiving funds that were taken from all over the world in order to help with their issue. That transparency, again, is the key. It opens up the ability for you to understand where your money is going and how it's helping. So I think that if, in terms of hurricane relief, if those funds and maybe even FEMA were to be put onto a ledger system and to be able to be seen where things are being spent and how it's being allocated, that would be a really good application.
I agree. As of now, I don't feel like this technology is mature enough to actually be effective in that sort of thing. But going back to EduBlock and what we're doing, we're this decentralized incubator, and we're focusing on community work. So as of now, we have a lot of projects in mind that we wanna implement on Puerto Rico that have to do with social impact and something that is actually good for the community.
So there's actually a question specifically for you, Micheal Angelo. They're asking about the hackathon. Is the hackathon open for everyone? Is it exclusive for students on the island? Do you need mentors?
Okay, so the hackathon is open to everyone, but the prize money, so we have $10,000 in scholarships as well. The prizes are enclosed to students. Anyone can participate, but only students get the prizes to make it like more fair for the students. So yeah, yes, we need mentors as of now. We have people from ConsenSys who are helping, some people from P18, GBA is also, DNA is sponsoring us, But yeah, we would want mentors to help some students that are kind of afraid because they don't know if they need to be like an extreme programmer, if they really have to know. But for everyone that is scared, this hackathon is a learning curve. It's for everyone. It's going to be in groups of 4, and we're going to have mentors. But the more, the merrier. So I incentivize people that know about these certain technologies. So the hackathon has blockchain, VR, and open data. So anyone that knows about this could reach out to me, reach out to anyone on EduBlock, and they could help mentoring the students or anyone interested in that matter.
Excellent. So we have another question. So how did you come up with Restart Week? Why not Blockchain Week like Boston and New York has done?
This was, originally we called it Blockchain Week, and we were before New York and Boston for the first Restart Week. The intention originally was to have a blockchain-based conference in Puerto Rico to educate and to be able to bring the business owners there who might be interested in moving, as well as bring education to the people of Puerto Rico who might want to understand more about the sector or people who are interested in working in it. And what happened was Coin Agenda had already been in Puerto Rico previously, and D10E was looking for a time to come and do their conference as well. Blockchain Unbound had popped up, and we thought it would be a lot better to collaborate instead of compete and spread them out. So in that collaboration, put them all together in 1 week. And during that time, we're really understanding that, and just as having been there for the week leading up to it, and as we were preparing, we got really passionate about the idea of bringing together people who could build sustainably and regeneratively for the future. So blockchain is far beyond just the simple technology. It's almost like calling it Internet Week. We decided that Restart was something that's really necessary, that it's kind of, and if you look at the logo, it's an infinity symbol. It's kind of like pressing, the button on the computer. You wanted to restart everybody's energy and get everyone excited again about what the things are that they can do to create meaningful change, no matter how small or big the impact could be. If each person could just press that restart button and get themselves energized about any part of the events, we wanted to do that. So we ended up having a lot of different charitable things happen during that week. It was such a great outcome to see so many people who wanted to do everything from clean up the beaches to bring their technologies forward and see how they could be applied to all of the issues that surround Puerto Rico from the hurricane and beyond. And that's really where it was born from. So I think a couple of months prior to, or maybe even it was, I think 6 weeks prior to the events happening, the name was born, and the idea of doing a virtual restart on the entire place.
Excellent answer. So we have another question. So most leapfrogging efforts performed by countries failed. Alongside with economic zones, how can we ensure a special economic zone in Puerto Rico that doesn't fail again? Is the opportunity zones being applied in Puerto Rico weeks ago, allowing to defer taxes for a decade, the first step towards building a new series of regulation? If so, or how? So I'm going to be very clear about something. There is no way to stop a special economic zone from failing. There's a big reason we started calling special economic zones and other political experiment startup societies. It's because 90% of startups fail. Likewise, a huge percentage of special economic zones fail. But many of you in our Futurology are probably familiar with the concept of the Pareto Distribution. So while the vast majority of startups fail, that small percentage of startups has the vast majority of dividends. And you even go within that 10%, you see that they get more dividends than even the rest of the 10%. The same is true with special economic zones. Most special economic zones around the world they're focused on special interest, or they're badly located, or they don't have great regulations, or they aren't clearly articulated regulations, and because of that, they fail. But every once in a while, you get a Hong Kong or a Dubai or even places like Singapore. So yes, there is risk associated with that, but there's risk associated with all actions. The benefit that special economic zones provide is that they allow for experimentation that you couldn't do on a large scale, because you can easily leave, you can experiment with these new zones. All right. You guys want to contribute to that, or want to move on to the next question?
That was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you prevent something like a special economic zone that only comes into existence due to special interests in centralized planning? Oh, so that's an old question. My apologies. Let me go down. Let's see. How can I leverage blockchain technologies to include local citizens and models of ownership and type of ventures based out of the island?
You repeat again?
Will do. How do I use blockchain technology to empower locals rather than just empowering financiers or people outside the island?
Well, if I can add to that, like I said earlier, I think blockchain gives the community, the people, the power to actually leverage what they're doing. So they can be their own person, they can do their own startups. It's like a restart. So basically that's what I feel in terms of like the community compared to like the industry or the private sector. So you can do your own startups and you can fund them as well. That's why you have ICOs. So it gives kind of power back to the people. It is a decentralized system that allows you to actually do stuff for yourself and depend less on the government or the private sector.
Yeah, to add on to that, I would recommend looking up a DAO or a DAC. I guess a DAC would be a more appropriate. So a decentralized autonomous community, and operating as such, it depends on what the project is that you're doing, but maybe you're not looking to build a profit-driven company. Maybe this is something that's a community initiative, but you also want to raise funds. A DAC is a really good model. And I think that that's really, this is showing how the future can be put into the hands of all of the people if organizing and self-organizing better into community structures.
So one potentially interesting use of blockchain technology is the combination of property rights and the land lease model that I discussed before, where people pay a certain fee for being on the land and tokenizing that. But the important aspect that makes it more community focused and not profit focused is that everyone in the community has a share of those.
I think he froze.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how about now?
Yeah, you're good, man.
Okay, I'm here?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So one cool initiative to really empower locals is that if you tokenize land holdings, as I mentioned before, and you have a property registration on the blockchain, you can also tokenize shares of that very land. And one way to empower the community is, instead of just having it go to outside investors outside of Puerto Rico, what you can do is you can give tokens that represent shares in that tokenized land to the citizens who live there. The consequence is that everyone benefits from rising land values, and more importantly, they are incentivized to be more productive in their land and to treat it well. So it causes the communities to mesh better together for financial benefit. But obviously, it will allow people, because if they don't have to scrounge for a living, they have these shares, they're able to operate more freely and can do more community projects and fund more community projects.
Mm.
Right. Let's see. One more question. So, will the program take advantage of IFE, International Financial Entity Law in Puerto Rico?
Which program?
Exactly.
It's the International Financial Entity Law in Puerto Rico. I think this is a very specific question. I don't think any of our that our speakers know much about it, so it wouldn't be something we can really talk about. let's see. So what are the main arguments against bringing investment to Puerto Rico?
I am unsure why there are any arguments against bringing capital to a place that needs capital. It blows my mind in a way, and is extremely confusing to me why anyone is pushing back, from entrepreneurs moving there, from venture funds coming there, from people bringing outside funding and putting it there. If there is attention and light shown on Puerto Rico and the businesses within it, and people want to invest outside capital, by all means, bring it on.
Yeah, I agree with Crystal. I guess there is no bad way to actually just bring money to an island that has economic crisis. So as of that, yeah, I agree 100% on what Crystal is saying.
Excellent. So another question. Puerto Rico's Institute of Statistics was recently closed down. What should citizens do to maintain and protect the open data necessary to run their government?
Well, I feel like you can open source it if it has to do something with funds. You can even do an ICO and get some funding, but you can open source it. And through a decentralized system like EduBlock, you can maintain. So try to get some community outreach to try to work with those problems.
I think the clear answer is, and I don't want to be that guy in the blockchain space and say, just put it on the blockchain, but it's a perfect use case for it. If a centralized institution wants to get rid of something, create a decentralized database that can't be shut down so that they can put it on there.
Exactly.
A great way to say it.
All right. So we are at 8:03 EST right now. So I think that concludes the live streaming efforts. I'm happy to go on if you guys are, but I understand that you guys we all have lives and we have appointments to take care of. So if you guys want to conclude right now, we can say our final words. I think maybe one cool thing that we can do for the live stream is just say what our best hopes are for Puerto Rico in the next 5 years.
Okay, I'll start then. So my goals for Puerto Rico is basically joining the community and creating further helping the infrastructure of EduBlock, getting more students involved with blockchain and just fintech, just focus on fintech, teach more students, get them the tools necessary so they can create. So then we can align Puerto Rico to maybe becoming an emerging market in 5 to 10 years. So that's what I want to see. I want more startups. I want more students creating and staying on the island and just innovating from the island. I want Puerto Rico in 5 to 10 years to be an example to show to the whole world.
That's awesome. I think I would like to see Puerto Rico on the top 5 list of most innovative places in the United States. And let's get it really high up on that list globally as well. I think that it has every single potential to create economic growth and drivers, and it has all of the people with every capacity. The intelligence is there, the heart is there, which is really important, and the community is there. So I would love to see Puerto Rico rising in the ranks on innovation globally.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Really solid answer. I'll answer, but I'm going to make something really clear. I'm not Puerto Rican. I haven't been to Puerto Rico. I do plan to go to Puerto Rico for Restart Week immediately after our conference in George Mason University, and go to Restart Week and help with that. But I want to make it clear, I shouldn't be leading the future, and no one who isn't Puerto Rican should be leading the future or direction of where it should be. Should people like Micheal Angelo or other brilliant entrepreneurs that are on the island. But I do want to see is opportunity given to people who so deserve it. They've been so closed off from opportunity in a land of opportunity that it just seems very unjust. But there's been the beautiful thing is that places that organizations like Restart Week and other organizations are doing so much right now to activate all these assets, to activate all these people in this latent potential that exists. What we should be doing is making sure that Puerto Rico is the home of the future. And what I mean by that is that exponential tech will have a place to grow, a place where it can experiment, a place where it can demonstrate the future rather than simply argue about it. Being so close to the United States and other trade networks and having so many beautifully smart people and this whole influx of capital that is coming, this is an opportunity that only comes once in a generation. And I think people realize that. And what this conference is, the Startup Society Summit, and what Restart Week demonstrates is that there's people who are conscious of that and they're willing to take next steps. So my hope in the next 5 years is that these people will enact their dreams. Puerto Ricans will be able to be given the tools to enact the future they always deserved.
Yeah, well said.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, everyone, Micheal Angelo, Crystal, thank you so much for joining us. I think this was a tremendously great AMA. The Startup Society Foundation is incredibly grateful that you are part of that we are part of this consortium that's trying to build a better future for Puerto Rico. And I'll see you at the George Mason University Summit, Crystal, and I will see you in Puerto Rico, Micheal Angelo.
Thank you. This is awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for being here. Bye.
No problem at all.